How does a franchise build the most terrifying offensive machine in modern hockey history, yet still find themselves begging for a savior in the crease every single spring? When you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl in their primes, expectations are naturally sky high. The Edmonton Oilers should be competing for the Stanley Cup every single year. But despite all of that world-class talent, the exact same problem keeps finding its way back into the conversation, and that is goaltending. If you want to understand how a dynasty gets derailed before it even truly begins, hit that subscribe button right now, because the truth behind Edmonton's struggles is much darker than just a few bad bounces. Everything in Edmonton changed the moment Connor McDavid arrived on the ice. This was no longer a franchise trying to climb out of the bottom of the standings. The Oilers were suddenly expected to contend. And over time, they built the kind of high-octane offense that made those massive expectations feel entirely realistic. Their offense has been one of the most dangerous in the entire league, capable of overwhelming opponents on any given night. Edmonton became a scoring nightmare, capable of destroying defensive schemes with speed, skill, and pure star power. In the McDavid era, the Oilers have consistently ranked among the league's top offenses year in and year out. But while their relentless attack kept getting stronger, one crucial part of the roster never seemed to settle. It simply doesn't seem to matter how strong the roster looks or how many goals the Oilers can score. Eventually, the question always circles back to the crease, and this current reality is just another perfect example. Which brings us to the very first real attempt at solving the goaltending position during this era. And that was Cam Talbot. When the Oilers finally started turning the corner in the late 2000s and 10s, Talbot was the anchor standing behind it all. For a team that had spent years frantically searching for stability in net, Talbot actually looked like the definitive answer. And for a brief, shining moment, the grand experiment actually worked flawlessly. During the Oilers' 2017 playoff run, Talbot elevated his game to an entirely different level. In 13 high-stakes games, he posted a .924 save percentage and a 2.48 goals against average, helping Edmonton push deep into the postseason. It genuinely felt like the Oilers had finally found their franchise guy. But that stability was nothing more than a temporary illusion. After that magical run in 2017, Talbot's play began to rapidly decline. By the start of the 2018 to 2019 season, the front office was once again searching for answers. At the 2019 deadline, the Oilers dealt Talbot to the Philadelphia Flyers in exchange for Anthony Stolarz. Just 2 years after looking like the permanent solution, the supposed savior was unceremoniously shipped out of town. But losing your starting goalie is only a disaster if you don't have a backup plan. The problem is, Edmonton's backup plan was to essentially throw darts at a board. During that 2018 to 2019 season, Edmonton began transitioning toward Mikko Koskinen as their new starter. Koskinen finished that season with a .906 save percentage and a 2.93 goals against average. It was yet another desperate attempt to stabilize the most critical position on the ice. Instead of solving the problem, it mostly reinforced the terrifying feeling that the Oilers were entirely lost. So, instead of fully committing to Koskinen, the Oilers quickly found themselves retreating toward a tandem system. By the end of the 2019 to 2020 season, Edmonton decided to split the crease between Koskinen and the aging veteran Mike Smith. Neither goalie fully separated themselves as the clear, undeniable starter. Koskinen ultimately got the start in the playoffs, but the results were a complete disaster. Edmonton was eliminated in the very first round, with neither goalie playing particularly well. And once again, the franchise was heading into another critical offseason without a clear answer between the pipes. The following season, you would think management would learn from their mistakes. Instead, the situation barely changed at all. In 2020 to 2021, the Oilers once again split the crease between Mike Smith and Koskinen. But this time, a massive gap actually emerged between the two goaltenders. Smith had a remarkably strong regular season, posting a .923 save percentage and a 2.31 goals against average. Meanwhile, Koskinen struggled badly, putting up an abysmal .899 save percentage. Finally, it looked like Edmonton had a hot hand riding into the postseason. When the playoffs arrived, the Oilers leaned heavily on Smith. But even with incredibly solid individual numbers from their veteran starter, it didn't change the crushing final result. Smith finished the series with a .912 save percentage and a 2.40 goals against average. Yet Edmonton was completely swept in the first round by the Jets. Another grueling season, another humiliating playoff exit, and still absolutely no long-term answer. The systemic failure was starting to overshadow the individual talent. That lingering uncertainty led Edmonton management to take a massive, franchise-altering swing the following summer. Looking to finally permanently stabilize the net, the Oilers signed Jack Campbell to be their new undisputed starting goalie in 2022. The grand hope was that Campbell would bring long-term stability and completely erase the goaltending question mark. But that expensive master plan unraveled almost immediately. Campbell struggled horribly early on, forcing the Oilers into a state of absolute panic. The high-priced free agent was supposed to be the final missing piece of a championship puzzle. Instead, his struggles eventually led him to being sent down entirely. If you are enjoying this breakdown of the NHL's most chaotic situation, make sure you are subscribed to the channel so you never miss our deep dives into the dark side of sports management. The Oilers had thrown millions of dollars at the problem, and somehow the crease looked worse than ever. With their expensive free agent faltering, the Oilers found themselves turning to a completely different, entirely unexpected option, the rookie Stuart Skinner. Skinner stepped into the blazing inferno and began taking over the majority of the starts, eventually handling about two-thirds of the workload during that chaotic 2022 to 2023 season. And to his absolute credit, Skinner played incredibly well under immense pressure. He posted a .914 save percentage and actually finished the year as a finalist for the prestigious Calder Trophy. That strong rookie performance gave the Oilers something they had not possessed in a very long time: genuine hope. Heading into the 2023 to 2024 season, Stuart Skinner was clearly designated as the undisputed starter. For the first time in years, Edmonton wasn't frantically juggling multiple options or begging for a mid-season replacement. The crease finally belonged to one young goaltender. But relying on a rookie to carry a franchise with Stanley Cup or bust expectations is a terrifying gamble, and the cracks were already starting to show. On paper, the Skinner era looked like a massive, resounding success. The Oilers made a remarkably deep playoff run, pushing all the way to the Stanley Cup final in 2024. It was the absolute furthest the franchise had advanced during the entire McDavid era. But even during that incredible march toward the championship, the same deeply uneasy feeling never fully evaporated. Skinner's play could still be incredibly shaky at times. Over the grueling course of those playoffs, he posted a highly concerning .901 save percentage. Edmonton was aggressively winning games, but their goaltending still didn't feel like the kind of dominant presence that typically carries legendary teams through the postseason. Once again, the Oilers had acquired a goalie who could get them incredibly close, but perhaps not close enough. The following year, in 2024 to 2025, Skinner finished the regular season with a dreadful .889 save percentage and a 2.99 goals against average. Those are numbers that kept the burning uncertainty alive and well. And yet, miraculously, Edmonton powered their way back to the Stanley Cup final for the second straight year. The roster was just that undeniably good, and the offense was that incredibly dangerous. They were masking a fatal flaw with sheer offensive brilliance. Which brings us directly to the latest, most maddening chapter in this unending saga. In 2026, the Edmonton front office finally lost their patience, moved on from Stuart Skinner, and brought in Tristan Jarry. It was the newest, desperate attempt to stabilize the crumbling foundation in net. On paper, it was pitched as another reset, a fresh face to finally solve the nagging problem. But the situation felt sickeningly familiar to anyone paying attention. Jarry arrived in Edmonton carrying his own heavy reputation, including a well-documented history of playoff struggles in Pittsburgh. For the Oilers, it instantly started to feel like a horror movie they had already watched. It was simply another goalie, representing another blind attempt to fix the exact same systemic problem. And so far, it really just seems like the front office went out and acquired another version of Stuart Skinner. They traded one set of profound inconsistencies for another, hoping the uniform change would magically fix the player. When you finally zoom out and look at the hard data, the true tragedy of this era becomes crystal clear. Since McDavid entered the league, Edmonton has averaged 3.26 goals per game, which is the fourth highest mark in the entire NHL over that span. They score goals like an absolute contender, but their goaltending metrics tell a completely different, horrifying story. Over the same stretch, the Oilers have posted a miserable 900 team save percentage, ranking 20th in the league. And if you think that gap is noticeable during the regular season, it becomes even more terrifying once the playoffs begin. Offensively, the Oilers actually elevate their game when the stakes are highest. During the McDavid era, they have averaged an absurd 3.5 goals per game in the playoffs, the second highest mark in the NHL. But their playoff goaltending is an outright disaster. Over that same stretch, the Oilers have posted an 897 team save percentage in the postseason, ranking as the fifth worst among all playoff teams. How does a team with this much offensive firepower find itself searching for answers year after year? The answer is the timeline itself. When you have the best player in the world in his prime, the crushing urgency to win right now pushes management toward rapid, quick fixes instead of executing a proper long-term solution. Furthermore, Edmonton's defensive structure has consistently put extra unnecessary pressure on their goalies, forcing them into making incredibly difficult saves far more often than other teams. They are breaking their own goalies. All of those chaotic factors together have helped create the vicious cycle the Edmonton Oilers keep finding themselves permanently trapped in. They have successfully built elite offenses and secured two of the absolute best players in the world. Year after year, they put together rosters genuinely capable of competing with the league's elite. But through all the incredible highlights and offensive records, the one critical position that keeps slipping through their hands is the one position that true contenders simply cannot afford to get wrong. That is exactly what this entire McDavid era in Edmonton has been defined by. Until the Oilers finally lock down a real legitimate long-term answer in net, this destructive cycle is absolutely going to continue. Because no matter how brilliant the offense is, a team can only go so far without true stability in the crease. Until that fundamental philosophy changes, the Edmonton Oilers are going to remain exactly where they have been trapped for years, completely stuck in goaltender purgatory. If you want to see more content exposing the truth behind the NHL's biggest failures, hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment about who the Oilers should actually sign, and I will see you in the next video.